What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. And I am bringing you Scott Noblet from the Buckeye home team, and he's with eXp Realty. And Scott, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me.
Oh, thank you for asking me to join this. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Scott, one of the things that I'm passionate about, I don't know if we chatted. I know you and I had a phone call, before jumping on here, and one of the things that I'm passionate about is really, helping newer people that get licensed, that really get us started and established in this business. And on the Tell Me More podcast, it's really all about just sharing your journey, right? Getting into the business and talking about the struggles and the successes and all of those things. So I believe that if one agent out there can relate to kind of your journey, some of your struggles or your successes, then we're doing our job, because it's all about letting people know that there's not one right way to get to this point, to get
Yeah,
into the business, and there's not
thousands.
one right way to have success in this business, right? So,
Yeah, probably
um,
thousands of
Scott,
ways, right?
yeah, there's a ton. But Scott, I always like starting, from the beginning.
hmm
What was life like for you growing up?
hmm Okay, cool. Are you thinking birth
Yeah,
to
just
high school, college?
yeah, just childhood,
Yeah,
childhood,
yeah,
high school, were
yeah,
you, into sports? Were you kind of always an entrepreneur,
yeah.
family?
Yeah. All right, good. So I grew up in Crawford County, between Bucyrus and Galion, Ohio, which is north central Ohio. Oh gosh. Anyway, Colonel Crawford schools, we were kind of considered the cow town, or we were considered country, country people, even though a lot of us lived in subdivisions like my parents did. But anyway, a lot of farmers, a lot of agriculture around us. But quick, to answer the question, I mean that's where I was from like second grade on. Went
Okay.
through high school, got into sports. My dad was there's more to his story, but basically he was a coach in multiple sports back in that. If you ever watched the movie Hoosiers, he was kind of like that era.
Okay.
Coach in a really small gymnasium over in Ridgeway, Mount Victory, Ohio, Ridgemont High School, and
Okay.
then when I was young, they moved over to Crawford County. He took a job as a guidance counselor, but he never coached after that. But he always I grew up with him coaching me basically. So he was, definitely my hero in many ways, and loved playing sports, and always tried to learn from him, and really a competitiveness developed. I think the way we like he wouldn't just throw the ball to me. He'd throw the ball so I had to dive for it, or you know,
Yeah.
or he'd hit the ball to me, or he'd give me batting practice. We played, like, I grew up playing little league baseball. Babe Ruth, started out playing baseball in high school. But really what was funny is I changed all my sports, and this is a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey. um, I was starting as a baseball player at JV as a freshman, but my other sports I was sitting the bench, basketball and football and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
my brother had gone into cross country, and our high school was really had a lot of really good runners back in those days. And so I followed my brother into cross country, and eventually, because my basketball skills weren't so good, I got out of basketball as a freshman and went into swimming and swam 3 years. We were one of the smallest schools in Ohio that had a swimming pool, because we had a Timken roller bearing plant in our school that funded it for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they built our high school, they built a swimming pool, which made us one of the smallest schools in all of Ohio with a swimming pool. So
That's
anyway, that
cool.
was, I guess, what I'm trying to get to is that when I switched my sports, I went from team sports to individual sports. So
Mm,
cross country was, while it was a team sport, it was also much
right.
about, you got to do your best, to help the team. That's the same way with swimming. If you, finish first, second, or third, or, you get score in a meet, so it really kind of did develop some entrepreneurial spirit, I think, in me of you're kind of dependent on how well you do. You got to do well for yourself and for the
Yeah.
team. And so,
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, what was it like to have a coach, for a dad? Because I feel like you you have someone like that, right? Typically, coaches are always trying to learn, right? They're always trying to develop. They're trying to find an edge. They're competitive, like you mentioned. What were
yeah,
some of the things that you took away, maybe,
no,
um,
yeah,
you growing up?
yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I really did. He was my hero in so many ways. He had just a quick side story. He was such a good baseball player that he had a tryout with one of the it was a farm team for like the St. Louis Cardinals or something. And
Oh,
this, I
cool.
mean, I'm a little older, so my dad was in World War II. So he, right after he tried out for, the farm team, he ended up going into World War II. Went to Europe. He was in Europe during World War II, right? 20 some days after the, in,
Wow.
what they called D-Day plus 21, meaning that 21 days after they came on the beaches at Normandy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just give you that background. But yeah, it's interesting. He was, I guess, he died in 2003, and that's a little part of my story. I'll get back to. But
Mm.
when he passed away, well, let's see, trying to think how I was going to set that up. Um, there's I'm getting confused because there's actually multiple parts to the story that I kind of thought
Yeah.
about. But I guess I would say that when basically I got up and, talked about my dad during his funeral. That's what I was referring to. And one of the things I loved about my dad was he wanted, if we were watching a Ohio State game and we both, I grew up to love Ohio State Buckeyes because of him. He would call it as he saw it, not as like, I love that about him that, it wasn't that should have gone our way, even though it really the call was proper or something. You know,
Right.
he
Right. Right.
he would call it the way it should have been called, not the way it would have gone our way.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love that about him. I try to be that way when I'm watching games too. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess it's hard to answer your question in one sense. I mean, we definitely, like I said, we would do batting practice. I would hit tennis balls towards our house with aluminum siding, which wasn't the greatest idea. But we had a big enough yard that I wasn't hitting the house too much. But
Yeah. Yeah.
a good hit
um,
was one that went over the roof.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of lead me in through, high school to graduating. Did you end up going off to college? Kind of what were your next
Yeah,
couple steps?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. So just follow up a little bit on that story. So I followed my brother into, and I think this is worth mentioning too. I followed my brother into cross country. Like I said, we had a really good team. When I was a
hmm
freshman in high school, my team got second in the state, but I didn't contribute to that. I wasn't in the state meet. I didn't, wasn't part of that top seven or anything that got to run varsity. But and my brother didn't get to either, even though he was a senior, because he was actually too old to participate. He had been held back. He had been born with his hip out of socket. They call it a
mm,
congenital hip. Anyway, getting too deep there, but just to say that um, I was around a bunch of guys that were very good and very talented, but also a lot of hard workers and stuff like that. So, and I had a great coach. That coach um, really kind of put us through our paces of hey, we're going to run this course today. Last time you ran this course, this is how fast you ran it. You finished in this place on the team. He would lay out all these statistics. So it became,
yeah,
hey, now I've got 5 goals to hit. I want to improve my position on the team. I want to improve my time on that course, and so he kind of developed this competitiveness in us, and he would highlight, if you'd done something right or whatever. So anyway, we went from, I wanted to say the story of, second in the state. Um, and me not not being a part of that, to the next year, I got to run in the state meet in the
Oh,
top
cool.
7. I was, remember we ran at Ottawa Glandorf and I got 5th on our team. It was like the first time I ever got 5th on our team in the varsity as a sophomore, and helped us get to the state meet. But then I fell apart at the state meet and didn't, probably finished 7th on the team. But anyway, eventually I got to be pretty good. So I tell people I walked on at Ohio State, not in football, but and to see me now, you wouldn't think I was a runner because I'm way overweight. But referencing something you said to Leah Ackerman, I was watching earlier, that realtors, are invited to eat all the time. So that, yeah, I participate in a little too many of those realtor events when we get to eat free food. But anyway, as a senior, I got to the point where I got pretty good and ended up going to Ohio State. And then around my sophomore year, I decided to walk on to the cross country team. So I got to run a few meets at the, Ohio State. Wasn't a football player. I was a walk on the
Yeah.
cross country. So
That's awesome though.
fairly quick.
It's just, I'm sure there's a lot that I always find as I interview, agents, and there's a lot of things that probably happen earlier in our lives and in our careers that have huge impacts,
Yeah.
of our future business. And I'm sure, to get to that level, even, walking on, or even collegiately D3, D2,
Hmm.
D1, it's attention to detail, right? It's surrounding yourselves with other great people to push you. It's the competitiveness. It's, the will to actually want to practice and show up every single day when you don't want to, the discipline, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that took a ton of discipline,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
far as to
And
get to that level.
yeah, actually, I'd have to thank my brother for a lot of that. He kind of drove me. He's the one that's saying, "Hey, let's go out and run this, run this or that."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, he definitely he became kind of a pseudo coach in a way, because he
Yeah,
would
for
push me to
sure.
do more than I wanted to do myself. So
Yeah, and I'm sure that had a huge impact on you. I mean, that's what one things I tell, real estate agents all the time. I think, I believe that everyone should have a coach. I believe that everyone should have a peer, right? Someone like your brother. Hey, we're both going through this together. Let's get through the
yeah,
lows together. Let's get through the highs together. And then I believe that, everyone can coach someone to get to where they're currently at, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, whether it's, hey, you want to break 15, a 16, minute 5K, okay, cool. I can show you what it takes in order to get there.
yeah, yeah,
Whatever the case may be. So
yeah,
so did you end up graduating then from Ohio State? And
yeah. Actually, can you hear me? Okay.
yeah,
Oh, okay, good. Um, yeah, I graduated from High State in mechanical engineering, of all things. And
okay.
I followed a good friend of mine. He knew he was going into mechanical engineering. I decided to follow him because he said that's where the money is. You can get a good job, get paid well. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I followed him into it, and got a job and did that for several years. But one of the things about corporate America, just to hit this real quick, is that while I'm sure it serves a lot of people well, um, I got to a point where this entrepreneurial spirit in me didn't want to be tied to, be at work at 8 and stay till 5:30 or 6 every day. And, you know, um, I just had this desire to do something else, something with more freedom, time freedom, or, set your own schedule and stuff like that, which is, I do say that one of the best things about real estate is be your own boss. And one of the worst things about it is you're your own boss. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So you did the mechanical engineering, and, for a couple years, what was kind of the lead up to real estate? Did you go into real estate right after that, or were there
yeah,
a
yeah.
couple other career
Um,
changes?
yeah, actually, so there's I probably ought to hit this quickly. Um, so when I was working in engineering. I actually worked for Liebert Corporation that made computer and air conditioning and power conditioning and stuff like that. I was in the air conditioning side, manufacturing engineer, and then a design engineer. And one of the things that I think is a real important part of my story is that when I went to Ohio State in engineering, we were using card readers, like Fortran, with stacks of cards that would go be read into a machine to create a
Hmm.
program to do something where then, 10 years or so later, they came out with AutoCAD on a PC, a small, personal computer. And AutoCAD was the innovation that changed so many things about, like, I used to be in the old draftsman era, where we would mark up a print and hand it to a draftsman and he would change it and we'd go through a process. Well, then AutoCAD comes along and the engineer himself can go ahead and do all that, doesn't have to pass it on to 2 or 3 people to
Right.
review or whatever. So anyway, I think that's an important part of this story. My story is that I say I was, trained in the dark ages of engineering and technology, and then something came along that totally changed how it was done. So I think that's one reason why I'm where I'm at, and I love that even though I was at Remax for several years, and I can talk about that more, 15 years at Remax, but then went to EXP, and I really liken or say that that's because of being cutting edge technology and cutting edge
Yeah.
communications and workplace and a lot of things that we have that are I think are unique advantages.
Yeah.
Being trained by top agents around the country and seeing how things are done around the country and things like that. So,
Yeah. I
but
think, it's one of the things where, adapting, right? One of the things that
yeah,
agents have to be willing to do is willing to adapt with change, whether that's the marketplace, whether that's, like, for example, when I got into the real estate in 2011, what, dot loop came out in 2013, something like
mm,
that,
mhm.
2014, like, up until then we were still faxing, and just
Yeah, yeah,
imagine, now,
yeah,
you could fight technology, you could fight all of those, but technology, we have to be willing to adapt to it, and then it's going to help us be a little bit more efficient with systems,
yeah,
processes, whatever the case may be. So
yeah, yeah. And another factor to answer your question was that at my company, they had been bought out back in my early years, and then there was always this, will the big parent company come along and find that you're being paid too much for the quality, the amount of work that you're producing. you know,
yeah.
there was this trade-off between how much are you accomplishing for the company versus how much you're being paid. Is it a good
Right.
ratio? And so
Right.
we were looking over our shoulders frequently. So I that was one of my motivating factors, that I had a good friend from church that had been his own broker, and so he and I started talking about the possibilities of me going into real estate with him, and so that's where I started out. Actually, I got my license in 1995. And while I'd like to tell you that it was a success ever since then, it really wasn't. So there was a lot of failure after that too. So um,
So you just went from that career into just straight into real estate.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
What made you decide real estate? I mean, going from the, and I know you said your entrepreneurial spirit kind of started to come out, and that
yeah,
willingness to kind of just do your own thing and be your own boss, but, like, that's a big decision going from, corporate world to, whether it was a salary or a certain pay, whatever the case may be, to,
yeah,
all right, we're done with that, and now I'm going to sell real estate, and I'm going to
yeah,
go
yeah,
into, commission based world. So did you have, like, an interest in it beforehand, or was it just,
yeah,
someone from church
yeah.
just said, hey, I think you would be good at
Oh
it,
no,
and you
yeah,
should give
that's
it a
it.
try?
Yeah, actually, there was a variety of factors. One, so my wife and I have 4 kids. I was working one job. It was, while it was a really good job, it was an engineering job. I felt like, I needed to make some more. So I took a second job working for Wayne Homes in the Sunbury, Delaware exit area,
Yeah.
71 and 36, 37. And actually, that's close to where I live. So I ended up, working for them from 90. This was actually in 92, 93 before I left the engineering job, and went through a really good training process, had a great sales manager and trainer, and learned Tommy Hopkins type stuff. And one of the things I loved about Tommy Hopkins is he talked about, um, emotion is the trigger of the sale, in a sense that, people buy an emotion and justify with logic. And he had a good way of tying down, like, ask questions, help people to come to the conclusion that you believe they need to come to with
Yeah.
questions. So there was some great training days. At the same time I was being paid $8 an hour. And if I sold a house, I got $125, which, would be like being paid $8 an hour for 3 hours to write a contract that they had a very detailed contract,
Right.
specifying the house. And it would mark up prints and all kinds of things. And you're getting $8 an hour and $125, when you sell the house and it closes or whatever. So I got to thinking, wow, I could make a whole lot better money as a realtor. So I started thinking those lines, and I had this good friend, a really good friend who I was working closely with, and close friends, and to some degree we were working together, and he encouraged me to, make this change. I was getting pressure from the company side to, maybe it was time for me to move on because I didn't have all the skills with AutoCAD or computer aided
Yeah.
design is what it's all about. So anyway, it was a confluence of events that I felt like I was being led to go that direction, and I
No.
was given an opportunity to go through the classes. I was actually receiving some money compensation for being there at the company several
Sure.
years.
Sure.
So there was all these things kind of worked together that it seemed like a really good option and the best way to go. But if I could just, expand and say, where they tell you in Honduras, I went to Honduras, and they tell you at Honduras, most of you won't be in this business, 80% of you won't be in this business in 2 years. And it took a little less than 2 years for me to go get a real job, real job.
I was gonna say, or when you made the switch to go and get your real estate license and go to be on the real estate agent side, I'm always curious, doubters, supporters. Again, you had a family, right? You're
Yeah.
going from a
Yeah.
set wage and income and all of those things to, again, now you're just kind of on your own. And that's not a I don't want to make it sound like that's a big decision, especially when you have other family involved and
Oh
kids
yeah.
and a spouse. Like when I got in, I was 22, right out of college, right? Like my bills and responsibilities were low for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
for you, like, did you have a lot of doubters? Did you have a lot of supporters? Were any of those motivating factors for you?
Um, hmm, Not sure I can answer that well. um, to some, let's see. I guess, in some ways I didn't feel like I had many options, how everything was coming together at that time. It wasn't like I had many options. And my good friend, he had he had paved a way, in the business. So he had been in the business several years at that point. So he formerly had been a Century 21 broker in another
Okay.
state. So he had the background, and so I kind of came in on with him as my mentor and my coach, and I was kind of part time helping him do some things, administratively. So it just seemed like a good option for us given all the circumstances.
Sure.
I guess I would say my wife wasn't thrilled because she had married an engineer, and it wasn't like she was planning on me becoming a self-employed realtor at some point. So that probably
Yeah.
wasn't the greatest thing in the world. Another element of that is that her dad had been a factory worker for many years. So, it was kind of like you go to work, you get home, you're not
Yeah.
distracted, you're not, on the phone, you're not trying to do other things. So,
I was just talking to a group of agents yesterday. Like I think that is a huge conversation piece that has to be had,
yeah,
with spouses and family members when it comes to getting
yeah,
into
yeah,
this business, and especially in the beginning, right? Like, what I always tell agents, like, what sacrifices are you willing to make?
really, yeah,
Are you willing to, sometimes, yeah, you sacrifices is family sometimes,
yeah,
depending
yeah,
on where you're at within your career.
right,
Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's, not being able to hang out and do certain things, it's because you're
hmm
trying to get your business up and running. Let's dive into the first couple years. You mentioned that, the 80% failure rate by the end of year two. What was it like for you, getting started into this business? And, how did you go about, really, focusing on how to build your real estate
yeah,
business?
yeah. And I kind of want to touch on one point that you
Sure.
just mentioned, which is that uh, in retrospect, I'm not so sure I handled it properly with my wife, that I probably should have had more of a discussion and listened to her more, and, probably should have taken another job, and tried to do real estate part-time or something, but jumped in, I did have a retirement plan that I could tap into if I had to. And so anyway, that was actually 1996 is when I officially started in real estate.
Okay.
And by the September, right around September 97, the handwriting was on the wall that I wasn't going to be able to survive the winter or, a downturn in my personal, book of business or anything like that.
Sure.
And so I actually took a factory job for 6 months with the promise from the temp company that they were going to get me into some kind of technology based, opportunity, which my personal experience was that I didn't get that until I demanded it, or I basically told them I'm leaving to go pursue it myself, because I wasn't getting it from the company that was supposed to be doing it for me. But it was interesting because I outlasted all the other temps for that 6 months. It was like people came and go, and I was the only one standing at the end of the 6 months, surprisingly,
Yeah.
because that wasn't my forte either. But it was very much a manual labor job. But let's see. So trying to get back to, I guess, maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't succeed initially. We worked well together, my broker and I. I did learn from him. I spent a lot of time with him. I got through some other networking opportunities we had. I picked up some business that ended up being my first sales. One thing I'll say is that I made a connection that could have been huge. I mean, we made a connection to an investor company, small group that had 30 houses, and they ended up putting 20 of them on the market with me, and I got 11 of them in contract with both sides. I had the investor on the buy side and on the sell side. This all happened in that first 2 years,
Yeah.
and come August of 97, that crumbled. Basically it turned into, there wasn't any money. The investors, the initial owners really weren't going to come away with much of anything. So
Sure.
so it fell apart really close to the closing table, and that set me back, because that would have been several tens of thousands of dollars in commission that would have helped me through the winter.
Sure.
So there was a trigger that happened that can't say that we expected that to happen, but
Sure.
had to roll with the punches.
Now, when you went, to take that other job, was in your mind, was it just, hey, this is temporary, just to kind of get
Yeah,
through and then get me back on my feet, or and
yeah,
real estate was always, on the forefront, or was it like, maybe real estate's really not for me, and I should
yeah,
probably look at a different career path? I mean, obviously, I know the answer long term now because I'm
yeah,
talking to
yeah.
you today,
Right,
but
right,
at
yeah.
that time, in that moment, kind of where was your mind at?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say initially I was, it was interesting. We'd get these breaks. You're working in a factory, you get a 15-minute break for a coffee or something, and I would try to make a quick phone call. Try to stir some business up. Um, had a couple of opportunities, but those didn't materialize really. So I was trying to chase business, during work, on lunch, lunch half hour, break times, and then after work, I tried to do a few things. So I had managed to sell a couple of things, but eventually I put my license on the shelf. And I didn't just work at a factory. The first 6 months were at a factory. Then I actually bounced around probably 5 or so different jobs, just a whole wide range of jobs. But most of those were in the kind of technology, AutoCAD, engineering fields, which
Yep.
was one of the best parts of that was I got to work for a civil engineering design company that did developments of subdivisions and stuff. So I got to
Hmm.
learn some of the ins and outs of things like, why do they put retention ponds, and I don't know if
Yeah.
our crowd would know this, but you're putting in so many hard surfaces with paved roads and shingled roofs and all these things that would normally cause the water to run to the runoff would go into the streams and flood downstream. So you got to create a way for that to be slowed down. So they have retention ponds and detention ponds and things like that. And we got into a lot of design that, was things like subdivisions, whether they had sewer systems or they had septic systems, so I got to
Right.
kind of expand my knowledge during that time. We had a great group of guys, just a lot of fun. One of the most fun environments I've ever been in, goofing around, joking with each other and getting good work done and playing basketball together and stuff like that. So, but again, I would move on from time to time trying to find the better match or whatever. So,
Sure.
but anyway, this is kind of going back to, I said in 2003, my dad passed away and he was sick with bladder cancer for about a year. And so that's where my story transitioned back into real estate. I kind of wanted to say this. This is not meant to diminish my dad, but his view of real estate wasn't the greatest. It wasn't
Sure.
like he was my guidance counselor and he always thought he wanted me to be a lawyer and I had no interest in that. But I think if he had really understood what real estate is about, I think he would have really been proud of, what we do and the variety of things that we get into and how we, collaborate with a variety of people and work through a transaction and all that stuff. So, but his view of it wasn't really what it really is, I'd say. So,
Well, it's one of those things where, with like this and getting other, you know, like-minded people to come on and just sharing their journey and sharing their successes and all those things. Real estate agents, we don't get held in the highest of standards, right? When it comes to the general public, they just think that we don't do anything and we just, cash in thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars
right.
into commission, but they don't really see, all of the behind the scenes and, all of those things that go into it. And it's funny, you brought that up because, everything that's going on with Intel here locally. I'm part of, I live out in Pataskala, so I'm a part of, all of that. I'm real close to Mink and 161 and
right.
part of this group, it's called the Intel Mega Project. It's a Facebook group and, just the citizens of Johnstown on there. Someone made a post about real estate as far as an agent goes. And one lady just commented, all they want is money, and it's like, they don't have any idea. But at the same time, right. How many times, I'm sure you've heard this multiple times over your career, like I have, agents are always saying like, I want to raise the bar of what it takes to become a real estate agent or a real estate professional, or, I like the word expert advisor, right. When it comes to real estate, but yet typically most agents don't help each other become successful. Most agents, hold everything to their chest because they don't, oh man, I can't tell Scott exactly what I'm doing because then he's going to use it against me when I go on a listing appointment or a buyer consultation or whatever,
Right.
And that's where, like we're both at EXP. And I think that model, as far as a brokerage goes, setting everything else aside about the model.
Yeah.
But the model in the sense of agents being in alignment with other agents to help them become successful
Right.
is how you help raise the bar of our industry, in my opinion, right? There's only a few things that we could really do to raise the bar. Whether that's way more schooling, getting it harder to become a real estate agent, higher fees to maintain your license or, requirements around maintaining your license. The only other thing I think is just other agents being successful, helping other agents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. I love that about our model too, in the sense that, the icons, one of the qualifications for being an icon agent, which is kind of our upper echelon of agents, is to give back to the rest of the community, to teach you this stuff on, whether it's, webinars, teachings, maybe at a EXPCon or a shareholder summit, one of the big events. I mean, they're one of their standards is to give back to the rest of us. So, and that there's a ton of great information that they hold and knowledge and experience, So I agree.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, I connect with you in those same, I hold, the same values that you do, in the sense of, I guess I would say part of my mission, if I didn't really lay it all out for you, but if I started in 96, by September 97, I'm working a factory job. And then I move probably 5 jobs after that and become unemployed. And right at that time, my dad was going through, some serious challenges with his cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I leveraged that opportunity. Basically I became his caretaker 4 or 5 days a week, with my mom, helping out. And that was a great time. I'm really glad I had that time. It was actually probably 6 months that I got to be with my dad, one to one,
Yeah.
or, mom and dad for many months, where I was there 3, 4, 5 days a week and
Yeah.
helping out. And so that was a big part of my story. And then after he passed, I'm like, what am I going to do now? And that's when I chose to go into Remax, and I was there for 15 years. But I guess that the part, what I want to bring out from that is that part of my mission, like you, I don't want people to go through what I would call was a lot of pain, a lot of, maybe I shouldn't say suffering, but it definitely was,
Sure.
anguish. There were times of anguish, where, how are you going to
Yeah.
pay the bills? How are you going to do this or that? Um, I so the recession hits. I go to Remax beginning of 2004. The recession hits 2007, 8, 9, 10, and I had one of the worst years ever. I did have a couple of good years, and then basically made no money. To nothing beyond paying my bills, and
Yeah.
that kind of gave me a kick in the butt. So
What 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 do you think you did differently between 96 and 97 and then coming back in 2003 up until the recession? Did you do
yeah, yeah,
anything differently, or was it just a
well,
different situation
yeah,
environment that you were in that kind of really
yeah,
impacted, your
yeah.
business?
To some degree, you might be surprised at this answer, but I'd been with a small individual broker, small broker. It was really just me and him initially. He didn't have a huge name, in our area of town,
Mhm.
but and most of the people that knew us, we knew through church connections, and so he had all those connections that kind of
Sure.
or automatically kind of went to him. So I didn't feel like I didn't have a name, like a brand name. So I decided to go with Remax to get the brand name, and did that, again, 15 years. So I think that was advantageous for me at that time, because if I went into an appointment, people would not guess or question
Sure.
my ability or my knowledge. As long as I think as long as I showed some competency,
Well,
but yeah,
and back then, brand awareness with your brokerage mattered,
right.
right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Like, it's not what it is today. Today I would argue that the brokerage that you're with, as far as the name and the brand, doesn't matter because technology has wiped all of that out and made it an even playing
yeah,
field,
yeah.
right? But back then, that did matter to some extent.
Yeah. I think it was probably real important at that time frame. Um, but I do think, I was trying to think of where I was going to go with that. But I guess the main point I was trying to make in that segment was to say, it's important to me to help. Like, one of the things we do now is we meet weekly for a couple hours, in person. I like co-hatches around town, so we go to a co-hatch and meet. So we're trying to train up some newer agents, and I really believe that, anytime you're doing real estate, it's an iron sharpens iron business, meaning that
Yeah.
if you're doing anything, you're learning some good stuff that you can help sharpen other skills, other people, their skills and abilities too. I had a teammate towards the end of my Remax career, and she and I were that way. She had she had become a Remax Hall of Fame agent out in Colorado, and then moved back here to be with her grandchildren. And so she and I would be on the phone, and she was always going through experiences that I was not going through, and vice versa. So I feel like I wanted to utilize that experience with the agents that we work with. So
Yeah.
we also do a Zoom call on Monday mornings too for about an hour, and we just try to kind of walk through, what are you going through? How can we help? What are your challenges? What are your successes? Celebrate successes. Um, work through your challenges. How can you work more strategically and more efficiently? Those kind of things. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, I think, that peer to peer, and then, you know, being able to help someone get to where you're already at, just helps you become a better communicator, helps you get better at your craft, all of the above. So,
Mhm.
Scott, lead me through, with your business, lead me through the recession, kind of lead me up to current day. How was
Yeah,
business, successes, struggles, ups, downs? Was it, gradual
yeah,
growth?
yeah, yeah. So I mentioned that I had this year where I remember kicking around with one of my good friends from that time. We were at the Westerville Realtors meeting, and afterwards we used to meet at the old CC's Pizza, and I'm out in the parking lot and just talking to him, and I remember that as a poignant moment in the year that I really didn't have a good year at all, and just thinking, man, where's the next opportunity coming from? And so it was kind of a kick in the butt. And so the next, shortly after that, I really decided to, put the hammer down, really, work hard. I was working a lot of hours. I would go in the office. I didn't go all the time to the office, but when I was there, I would be working every opportunity till, a lot of times we were closing the place down at, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
The building we were in, big brick and mortar building on Polaris Parkway. And I had some good friends that were, very work oriented, worked very hard, uh, that were, kind of a challenge. We would challenge each other to some degree. But so actually, one of the things in Remax world is that, if you make 50,000 in commissions, you're an executive club. If you make 100,000, you're 100% club. If you make platinum, that would be $250,000 in commission. And then I always had initially I just wanted to hit the 100% club, which I managed to do several times. And, um, and then I never made the platinum club, but I always wanted to, that was always the goal, was to try to get to the platinum club and, have a huge year, and had some
Yeah.
really good, I did have a lot of good, you know, contrary maybe to a lot of people's opinion, we had a really good collaborative team there, kind of a family atmosphere. Really, a lot of things to love about that environment, and that Remax office. I had two Remax offices, and both of them were like that. They were very collaborative, very helpful. So I guess the end of that story is to say, I was recognized at the end of that year. They would give away some funny awards, but some real awards, and they gave me this award that was, I guess, back in the day of Hertz and the Avis. Like Hertz was always number one, and Avis was number two, but Avis's uh, slogan was "We try harder." So they gave me the "We try harder" award that year,
I love
um,
it.
in the office. So that was kind of cool.
I love
And
it.
and I would say somewhere in there, it's hard to define what I did differently, I guess, but I found some lead sources. I work my leads, found better ways to strategically work through opportunities and leads, and uh, become better at maybe presenting. I think every time I would fail at a listing or something, you'd walk away and say, "What could I have done better there?" So that maybe was the engineer training in me, was how can I do this better next time when I get that opportunity. So I think that,
Or the cross country coach, right?
yeah, yeah, right, right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So eventually, I'd say it got better. I got more listings, to the point where the last few years, I would say I'm doing about almost 50-50 listings and buyers.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of cool, especially as much as it was a seller's market recently.
Yeah. It's one of those things I always, try to tell agents that, I'm either coaching or on my team. And, you know, uh, in the market that we're in now, not the one that we just came out of, but in the market
Right.
that we're in
Yeah.
now, like actually knowing and practicing the skill set around a phone conversation, calling leads or calling, your sphere or whatever, working on, what you say and how you say it matters. It's
Mhm.
going to help you get from, let's just say out of 10 buyers now, well, not all 10 are going to get into contract, right? Maybe 8 get into contract, and then 6 actually end up buying the house, right? 2 fall out due to inspections or financing, and then they never come back around.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing on the listing side. 12 months ago, you put a sign in the yard, every listing sold, right? It was almost
Yeah.
guaranteed. You get a listing, it's selling. Well, now, you may put one on the market, or you may put 10 on the market, and 3 decide to take their house off the market because they're not getting the traction, or they don't get the above list price offer, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them are going to be selling, right? So, like, I try to tell agents, practicing, right? You leaving a listing appointment that you didn't get and saying, well, how could I have done that better? Like that is what will move you forward in this business,
Yeah, that's
especially
right.
in this type of market that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Asking yourself, like, man, okay, I didn't get that one, but what do I got to do differently on my listing presentation? Was there
Yeah.
something that I missed on the initial phone call before I ever even showed up that I should have asked ahead
Yeah.
of time?
Yeah.
Was there something I could be doing to build rapport, to get
Right.
into relationship with them?
That's some good stuff. You just mentioned one thing is to have a good kind of pre-listing phone call and kind of
Yeah.
maybe establish what are their objectives, what are their goals. Are they being realistic about what price they hope to get?
Yeah.
Maybe you save yourself some time. Maybe that's not really the right listing for you to go after. But
Yeah.
then on the other side, I would say trying to add, like I've been adding some video elements to listing presentation where we show drone video, virtual tours of past successes and things. And
Yeah.
I always just a little, hopefully this is a key to success for somebody. I try to pick the house that's a little above where the house that I'm trying to list, that's maybe a little higher price point, a little better house, or something maybe close by but higher price point or something, so they don't feel like that's beneath me or beneath the house that I have to sell. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, Scott, that's awesome. I want to kind of transition into future, as
yeah,
far as, some of your goals and kind of where you want your business to go. What's something that you're looking to accomplish here in the next 12 months?
yeah. So in our world, getting to an icon status is a big part of what our goal is. And it's interesting. I something I haven't said to this point is that right before COVID hit, I hired my third son. I have three boys and a girl, and my third son has the gift of administration and organization and things that really help my business. So he never really wanted to be a realtor and may never become a realtor, but I hired him in full time, and then it was right before COVID hit. So within January 1st, 2020, he starts with me, and 3 months later we're worried about whether we're going to be showing any houses or selling any houses.
Right.
So that was an interesting timing, but um, I guess our goal right now, we're just shy of icon, and I'm by something like 6 to 8 transactions, and my reset date is February 1st, so I don't have a lot of time. But we've been
Yeah.
we've been working really hard, and somebody told me recently, and actually it was in one of our calls with an EXP kind of group call, and they kind of asked me, they asked us to talk about what are you going through, and I mentioned this goal to hit icon, and they said even if you don't hit it, put forth massive effort, and if you don't hit it, you might have a great month and a great start for next year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. Currently we are pressing to try to get to icon, or at least have a head start on it for next year to get there. So
There you go. There you
yeah,
go.
yeah, and
I love
icon
it.
being a big reward, a big stock reward.
For
So
sure. For
yeah,
sure. Scott, what are you looking to do, as far as what you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
yeah. So it's interesting. I definitely want to. I guess I want to continue to serve my clients, past clients, and future clients in a production capacity. But I also I've kind of pseudo started a little mentoring. Like I'm doing some mentoring within our company, and I've kind of got some things that I've been pulling together. So I may be doing more coaching and mentoring, um, a little more of that, and within the group that meets with me, our core group that meets with me weekly, doing more of that. Um, maybe, at my age, I got to start thinking about retirement. Will I ever retire? Um, they they say you got to list to last. So I wanted to get more listings, but I don't want to become listless either. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, I think, with that, just systems and processes, right? Making
yeah,
sure that, you just get those dialed in to where,
yeah, yeah.
you
We
can
wouldn't. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, I was just say so you can repeat and duplicate, right?
Right.
That's what it's
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things for agents to do within this business is actually follow systems and processes,
Right.
you
That's right.
know?
Yeah. And fortunately, my one of the big parts that my son Ty has brought to our business is a lot of follow up programs. Automated follow up, or the initial contacts, more of a consistent message. There's a variety of things that we do with that. So.
No, that's cool. Um, I've been adding this question in for our guest, and it's one that was posed to me a couple months ago now at this point,
Mhm,
and it's one that I think a lot of us don't really think about, and that's
mhm.
what what is the legacy goal for you? What is something that you want to leave behind or accomplish when you're no longer here?
Mhm. That's a good one. Ooh.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, yeah, really. Um, I guess, like if people were to speak at my funeral or epitaph or, obituary or, say something about me, I guess, when I'm gone. I think it would be, things like he placed his client's fiduciary responsibility above his own needs or wants or, desires. That he went out of his way to mentor and help other agents to succeed and to avoid pitfalls. Like we can talk about common pitfalls that most of us would make if we didn't have a good mentor. So, kind of along, I think what your philosophies and beliefs are is that we do enter in mentoring and coaching. Um, in some ways submit ourselves to a mentor or a coach
Yeah.
to have an influence on us and to learn from them I think especially like my hope would be to be more of a mentor and a coach in central Ohio. While I think a lot of things do relate across the country, I would
Right.
like to kind of utilize my central Ohio knowledge and experience and strategies and things to help agents to avoid the many moments of anguish that I had over the years. So,
Yeah, yeah, I love it. Scott, I appreciate your time today, and we always end with this one last question, and it's,
uh-huh.
if you could give the audience one piece of advice that you either wish you had starting out, or if anyone were to ask you about this business, whether getting in, or maybe they're struggling, or they're ready to take that next step within their business, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, kind of goes back to that what I just said about definitely engage in mentoring and coaching for sure. And that's maybe not a guarantee for success, but be very strategic. Be very thoughtful, and this may sound a little may hit some people, but I also started praying on my knees, meaning that I would like to say I pray. I don't. It's not like I pray a ton, but I think there's kind of a humility in a sense of praying. When you're on your knees at times. Not to say I don't do that all the time, but it's something I
Right.
started doing. The more desperate I became.
No, that's
it's,
awesome.
it's some humility, I guess, is the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, Scott. I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you so much for coming on and, talking real estate, sharing your journey. It's not always what we see on social media and all
Yeah.
the glitz and the glam, right? It's
Right.
sometimes it's
Right.
the nitty gritty, sometimes it's the falling down and having to get back up, and
Yeah.
it's not always just we're out here just living a fun happy life selling real estate. Sometimes it's the
Right.
real and the raw. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey. And those that are watching, Scott's phone number has been at the bottom of the screen. So if you're looking to buy, sell, invest in Central Ohio. If you resonated with Scott and his story, make sure you reach out to him personally. If you're a real estate agent, that connected with Scott, with his story, he's here to help you grow and add to your business. But Scott, for those that are listening in, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. My phone number is 614-805-9355. Call or text me. My email, I did start my own team called Buckeye Home Team. Just a quick point on that is that I didn't want it to be the Scott Noblet team. I wanted it to be, about what other people could benefit from the name, in a sense, wouldn't be tied to me. So it's Buckeye
Yeah.
Home Team. So Scott at buckeyehometeam.com. But yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. And this is a great series of questions, and I appreciate this podcast.
No, I appreciate you and your time. And if I could ever, repay you for it, please let me know. I'm here to help you and serve you and your
Yeah,
agents any way that I can.
sounds good. We'll look forward to
Awesome.
having you as part of our group here soon too.
Yeah, just let me know.
As
Let me know. I
speaker.
appreciate you and we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.